11 canned foods are being pulled from Walmart's supply commitments, and the deadline is already written into the contract calendar. Not one product, not one category, all 11 at once. I went through the quarterly reports and recent earnings calls from big names in canned food. Same answer every time. Number 3 surprises nearly everyone. A brand on shelves since 1898, hit by a steel tariff most shoppers never think about. We will get there. This countdown runs from the first gaps you will notice to the one you would never expect, and by the end, you will know exactly which to act on before August. Number 11. Canned wild Alaskan salmon. You probably walked past it on your last grocery run without a second thought. Most people do. It sits in the same spot it has occupied for years. Silver labels, modest price tag, utterly unremarkable. And that assumption, that it will always just be there, is exactly why this item opens the list. Wild Alaskan salmon is not a specialty product. It is one of the most dependable proteins in the canned food aisle, and it is about to become meaningfully harder to find at the price you are used to paying. The Alaska Department of Fish and Game's April 2026 forecast projected the pink salmon harvest at 56 million fish, the lowest in more than a decade and down sharply from the prior year's run. Pink salmon is the backbone of canned salmon production. When the harvest falls this dramatically, processors do not absorb the loss. They reduce volume, raise prices, and the lower margin retail accounts, including large box stores, are the first to see SKUs consolidated or dropped entirely. The Bureau of Labor Statistics reported seafood prices rising 3.7% in the first quarter of 2026 compared to the same period last year. That movement is already baked into the contracts suppliers are negotiating right now for the second half of the year. Retailers make their stocking decisions before the product arrives, and Walmart's buyers have already been told what the pack numbers look like for the coming season. The decisions being made in June and July will determine what the shelf looks like in September and October. Imagine opening a can of salmon over the sink. That clean smell of cold Pacific water, the firm pink flesh separating along the grain. Now imagine finding that same spot empty in September. The gap will not be dramatic. One fewer facing, one fewer option, a slightly higher price on what remains. Pick up 2 or 3 cans now, while the price still reflects last year's harvest numbers. The wild Alaskan salmon category has very few domestic substitutes at a comparable price point. When it contracts, buyers have nowhere obvious to redirect. By the fourth quarter, those numbers will not apply. Number 10, canned chicken. Most people assume canned chicken is filler, the item you reach for when you have nothing else and nothing sounds good. That assumption has kept it underpriced and undervalued for years. It is also the assumption the poultry industry is about to correct. The USDA's Livestock, Poultry, and Dairy Outlook from March 2026 flagged a contraction in broiler production capacity driven by persistent feed cost pressure and ongoing flock rebuilding after the 2024 and 2025 avian influenza outbreaks that affected commercial flocks across 15 states. Feed corn and soybean meal costs remained elevated through the first quarter of 2026 per the USDA Economic Research Service, and processors have been running at reduced margins for 18 months with no near-term relief on the input side. Conagra Brands, which produces the Swanson canned chicken line, noted on its February 2026 earnings call that input cost pressure in poultry was not expected to ease before the second half of the year. At the same time, demand for shelf-stable protein has been running above their forecast, driven by consumer pantry behavior that started shifting in late 2025. That combination, higher input costs, supply tightening, and demand running hotter than expected, is the precise condition that precedes SKU rationalization at major retailers. When a category's margins compress and demand accelerates simultaneously, variety contracts first, then price increases follow. Both are already in motion. The first thing shoppers notice is fewer brand options. The second thing they notice is the price on what remains. Canned chicken has a faint, mild smell when you crack the lid, almost neutral, like cooked protein with nothing added. That neutrality is its value. It goes into pasta, salads, soups, casseroles, anything at all. That versatility is exactly what makes it disappear first when households start restocking, because it crosses every recipe category. Buy a case while it is still priced as the afterthought the market thinks it is. It will not be priced that way much longer. Number 9, canned Italian tomatoes. Here is something most people do not fully understand. Most of the crushed tomatoes, whole peeled tomatoes, and San Marzano varieties on American grocery shelves do not come from California. They come from Italy. And Italy's canned tomatoes are now sitting inside a tariff structure that makes almost everything imported from the European Union meaningfully more expensive than it was 12 months ago. The Section 301 tariffs that had been selectively applied to EU goods were expanded in January 2026, with the Office of the United States Trade Representative confirming an effective rate increase on processed tomato products from Italy and other EU member states. That tariff went into effect February 1st, 2026. Importers absorbed the first wave through the spring. The second wave, the price adjustment to retail contracts, is landing now in the second quarter, which means Walmart's cost from their importers is materially higher than the price on the shelf currently reflects. That gap cannot persist long. Given that both importers and retailers are operating on thin margins, the consumer absorbs the adjustment at the shelf. That is how it has worked every time. The smell of a good Italian canned tomato when you open the tin is almost sweet. Concentrated, slightly acidic, rich with whatever the volcanic soil and coastal sun gave the fruit. That smell has a price attached to it now that it did not have last year. Walmart has been in extended contract renegotiation with multiple Italian tomato suppliers since the tariff announcement. August 1st marks the end of several of those protected price contract periods. The domestic alternatives will stay cheaper. But if you want the import varieties, the whole peeled, the San Marzanos, the window is shorter than it looks. Stock them now, before the contract floor disappears. Number 8. Canned sardines and mackerel. Nobody is particularly excited about canned sardines. That is a fact you can confirm in any grocery store by watching how many people reach for them versus how many walk past. But the people who do stock canned sardines know something the rest of the aisle does not, and that advantage is about to become a lot more visible to everyone else. The North Atlantic mackerel and sardine fisheries are managed under bilateral agreements between the United States, Canada, the EU, and Norway. In February 2026, Norway unilaterally increased its mackerel quota claim by 18% above the level agreed in the 2025 multilateral framework, citing updated stock assessments from the Norwegian Institute of Marine Research.